Welcome, everybody. It's Donald Davidoff, co-founder and CEO of Real Estate Business Analytics, back with you again for yet another episode of the People Behind the Performance, where I sit down with key industry leaders to dive into what's driving the real estate industry success, the role data plays in it, and maybe more importantly, tell the stories of the people behind it. Today's guest runs one of the more interesting startups in the marketing space. Jacob Carter is the chief executive officer and founder of Nurture Boss, where they operationalize CRM with lease and renewal conversion automation. Jacob's been in tech for a while. He started his career just over a decade ago, 2012, as a lead web developer at IEK Solutions. He moved on to Crescendo Business Solutions as a front-end developer, and in 2014 joined Integrate as a software engineer. He was promoted to a software development manager and then ultimately director of software engineering. A few years later, in 2018, he moved to Keep as manager of software engineering. In 2009, joined Integrate as a group product manager and a technical product manager, and then founded Nurture Boss in 2020. Full disclosure, I do have a small investment in Nurture Boss, and I serve on their advisory committee. Welcome, Jacob. Let's dive right in.
Yeah, thanks for having me. Excited to be here.
So I'm guessing a lot of people in our audience are not necessarily familiar with Nurture Boss. So tell us a little bit more about exactly what Nurture Boss does.
Yeah, so I'll give you the 10-second pitch and then the 45-second for a little more detail. But at the end of the day, our goal is to automate as much prospect follow-up and resident communication as possible, full stop. The piece that we care about and that I think is exciting because, data is a hot topic for us is we like to use the information available to us to understand what prospects and residents care about, and then automatically and dynamically tailor that automated follow-up to speak to those interests and needs. And that's really our focus here at Nurture Boss.
Oh, perfect. That piece is what interested me in what you do. So what motivated you to start Nurture Boss?
Yeah, I mean, to be candid, I was, excuse my language, I was a pissed off renter. I've in my 20s rented a lot of apartments, like a lot of us do. And to me, it was crazy that I felt like I'm signing up to give a business tens of thousands of dollars a year of my money, and I couldn't get a phone call returned. I couldn't get a question answered. When I moved in, it felt like they didn't even remember that I lived there. Getting communication that was meant for somebody else sent to me. And, you went through a very thorough work history of me there. So obviously, I've been in software for a long time, which means I think code solves all problems, right or wrong, So I thought, I think I can build something that will create a better experience for me and therefore for other people and would provide value to these apartment buildings. And that's kind of the genesis of it.
Mm-hmm. So when you look at the industry today, I mean, what do you see? I mean, God, you started in 2020, right at the big inflection point that COVID forced on everybody. Now, as we come out of that, we're returning to some of our slower ways of making decisions, et cetera. But I think it's a fundamentally changed industry. So I'm really curious. Your perspective is still a relative newcomer to the industry. What are you seeing as the state of the state?
Yeah, so absolutely. We all know the evolution in the last 3 years has been pretty incredible in multifamily, specifically adoption of technology and new processes and procedures. I come from marketing. I come from MarTech, marketing technology. So I've been trained on the way the rest of the world leverages marketing technology. And coming to multifamily, it's a bit of a shock to kind of see the way multifamily leverages technology, or maybe better said, doesn't leverage technology. So it's been exciting to see the growth, but I guess my outsider take on it is that, we're not quite caught up, if you will, with the rest of the world on how we leverage tech and more importantly, how we leverage data to drive decision-making. And I think there's still a ton of opportunity there for education and adoption of modern thinking, if you will, that's going to not only make us more money in the apartment industry, but will also create a lot better experience for our customers, which are the prospective renters and existing residents.
Yeah. So with your MarTech experience, is there a specific example of something you've seen another industry do that you think we ought to be doing more of?
Yeah, if I want to pick one example to talk about, I'd probably pick something like multi-touch attribution. So this is this idea that we understand a lead is generated from a source and it ultimately converts to a customer. And that's a leading and a lagging indicator of what caused that success. But a lot of things happen in between point A and Z. And by having a good understanding of what those things are, a good way to measure what worked and what didn't, we can actually change our process and procedures for marketing to those folks to be more successful. and would provide better insight as to if those lead sources or those last touch points of the close are actually as impactful and effective as we think they are.
Yeah, no, multi-touch attribution. I mean, when I ran marketing back in 2007 at Archstone, it was even harder then. So that's definitely been a dragon to slay for quite a long while. So you're pretty you're still pretty early in your career, at least compared to me. That's just a nice way of saying I'm old. But in the 10 or so years that you've been working at this, who has your most influential professional mentor been?
Yeah, that's a good question. I would say the CEO of Integrate. So if his name's Jeremy Bloom. If you went through my work history like you did there, you'll notice I was at Integrate, I left, and I came back. And when I came back, I actually came back on the product side, not the engineering side. So, watching Jeremy build his business from the ground up, and he had a successful exit a year or two ago, and watching him make decisions, change the direction of the company, go through merger and acquisitions of other companies, was very educating for me. And we all are Monday quarterbacks or armchair experts and have these thoughts and ideas and how we would do it, right? But then when you actually get in the seat and you're running a business and you're building a company, it really opens your eyes as to why things are done the way they are and how hard decisions are to make. So that's been really influential on me.
Yeah, that resonates with me over my last 3.5 years. Hey, so you said something that actually intrigued me more as a prop tech person than an operator. But you talked about how you came back into product, not engineering. I would venture a guess that the vast majority of our customers out there don't even really understand how tech development works, that product and engineering are different. So given that you had roles in both, maybe share a little bit of a compare and contrast of what those two parts of a tech company are.
Yeah, absolutely. I love this topic. So the easiest way to say it is product decides what you build and engineering decides how you build it. So, it's product's job to be obsessed with the problems that they're solving. So what are the pain points of my customers? What's keeping them up at night? What's losing them money? What's taking them a lot of time? And based on a deep understanding of those problems, you ideate on possible solutions. You test those various solutions through discovery and other methods that product leverages. And ultimately, what you end up with is a chosen solution that you want to build to provide value to the customers. You deliver that chosen solution to the engineers, and the engineers go about figuring out how to build that so that it works well, so that it ideally is bug-free, so that it's fast, so that it's a good experience for the user, and then they go about building that thing. So there's a lot more nuance there, but I think that's a pretty good explanation.
No, that's excellent. Yeah, you talked about how being, sitting in the seat is always a little different than the armchair quarterbacking. What is the biggest challenge that Nurture Boss is facing right now, and what are you doing to overcome it?
Yeah, so I think the biggest challenge that we're facing is trying to play an impactful role on educating the industry on other solutions available, other processes, trying to drive innovation forward. So, we briefly touched on something like multi-touch attribution. That's an example. Right now, kind of the thing that keeps me up at night that I'm spending a lot of time on is I believe there is a hard line drawn between marketing and operations and multifamily. And I'm a big proponent of blurring the heck out of that line and really bringing these two departments, if you will, more hand in hand and sharing a lot of responsibility. So that kind of effort to blur that line between marketing and operations, I think, is our biggest challenge right now.
No, I think that's very insightful. I remember working very hard on trying to blur the lines between pricing and marketing because they're both levers on demand management. And structurally, as you say, the industry is not always aligned that way. But I don't know. I think the last AIM conference felt like people are starting to get it a little more. Have you seen some movement, or to what degree to what would you attribute some movement, or what's holding people back on making that transition?
Yeah, certainly. So I think there's a lot of things that are helping people move in the right direction. The adoption or bullish attitude on centralized leasing is one of those. inevitably, when you move toward a centralized leasing model, marketing and operations start covering a lot more ground, and they have to work together if they're going to be successful. So that's been a really good forcing hand, if you will, to help drive things in the right direction. I think the other, on the flip side of that coin, the thing that maybe is slowing us down is the perspective that we're taking on things. So an example of that is, I would challenge us that residents should be looked at as renewal leads, right? And if we look at residents as renewal leads, it changes the things we do to nurture residents, to foster their experience, all in an effort to drive the next conversion, which is the renewal. So until we start looking at things differently, it's hard to justify why marketing should play a role in the resident experience. So that changing perception, I think, is the thing that's holding us back.
Interesting. So you're 3 years into your multifamily journey. Most people I interview been in the industry a little longer, but I'll still ask my favorite question. All right, what's one thing that 2023 Jacob knows about this industry that you wish you could go back and teach 2020 Jacob, because he didn't know it when you first got in?
Yeah, well, I think asking me that question, you probably get a list that's a mile long, right? The things that, I don't know. Imagining myself 3 years ago walking into a room with multifamily experts, telling them what I know, it makes me laugh. You know what I mean? So yeah. I've learned so much and have so much to learn still. But I think one of the best things about multifamily is how relationship driven this industry is. Everybody's kind of in the trenches together, solving a common problem, and have this deep understanding of this nuanced space that no one else really understands until they're in it. So if I could go back and tell myself something 3 years ago, it would be to prioritize meeting people, deprioritize trying to sell them Nurture Boss when I meet them, and spend more time talking generally about the industry, learning from each other, commiserating and celebrating the different pieces of multifamily and the issues that we're trying to solve. And that's something I'd probably do differently if I can go back in time.
Yeah, no, I hear a lot of people say something similar to that. I mean, it's one of the things I love about this industry is how fragmented it is. Because I grew up in the travel industry. My parents had opened a travel agency way back when. And, the travel agency, I mean, Hyatt versus Marriott, United versus American, especially you go back in the 90s, 80s and 90s, I mean, that was cutthroat competition. And so it was the opposite of collegial. And one of the things that I do love about this industry is, some of the best lessons I learned from competitors back in my operating days. And even now, in the vendor space, it's still, much more collegial than any other place I've experienced. Frankly, it just makes for a more enjoyable industry to me. I mean, that's part of what's kept me in.
Yeah, I agree with everything you just said. Yeah.
So, what is there anything when you think back to like learning the industry as quickly as you had to, any favorite publications or conferences or resources? Like if you were talking to somebody who was just starting that journey and, granted you're only 3 years down the road, but you still got some battle scars, what are the things that helped you get up to speed to really learn about this industry?
Yeah. Going to conferences is a great use of time and money, and it's not about ROI, it's about experience, right? It's about the people you meet and the things you learn. So, the big ones like AIM, Social Media Summit, OpTech, Apartmentalize are worth mentioning. But there's a lot of really great regional things. We're based out of Arizona, so the AMA is kind of our home turf, and being involved there, I think matters. The publications, there's a lot of things out there. There's the newsletters, whether it be from Globe Street or Multifamily Insiders or, MHN, the different things that you should subscribe to and pay attention to. But I think what I've gotten the most value out of are listening to conversations like the ones that we're having. There's some good folks out there putting good content, and the podcast/webinar long form conversation, I think is really helped me learn more than anything else. The only thing that maybe is above that is just going out and spending time with on-site teams, leadership.
I'm so ADD. You know what my big cheat is with webcasts? Because I sign up for them so that I get the email. We missed you, but here's the link. And then I watch them at double speed, unless it's a really fast talker.
Yeah, there you go. Yeah,
so I can watch I can watch an hour webcast in about 30 minutes if they're not talking too fast, just
I'm gonna
running
steal
at
that
double
from you.
speed.
Yeah, I'm gonna steal
Yeah.
that from you.
It actually annoys me. I forget who it was. Somebody changed their video use and it only had quality, not speed. And I wrote him an email like, "You're killing me. It's taking me 30 minutes to watch your 30-minute, even one and a
Yeah,
half speed. I could watch it in 20 minutes." They actually
yeah,
wrote back, "Good point. I'll check with it." And they changed they changed what they were doing with their
that's great.
provider to
Yeah,
allow
that's great.
the speed up. So I hope I've never checked. I hope our webcasts. Anybody who's watching, tell me whether you can watch our webcasts at faster than 1x speed.
Yeah, now that you made us think
Okay.
about it, they better be able to.
Yeah, yeah. Well, my VP of marketing is scrambling to change that right now if we don't allow it. Anyway, um, let's switch gears and talk about data. I mean, obviously, Nurture Boss is dependent on data. So talk a little bit. I mean, the term data-driven decision making gets thrown around all the time. So I always love to ask my guests what data decision making or data-driven decision making means to them, sort of bring it
Yeah,
to life as opposed
yeah.
to just a buzzword.
That's a great question. So, what it definitely does not mean is waiting to have data to make a decision, right? Data driven decision making is this is again from the product engineering world. You're constantly iterating on stuff. You just make a choice and do a thing, but then measure that thing, understand if that thing is impactful or not, what's working, what's not, make adjustments and repeat that process for the rest of your life. You know what I mean? You'll never find the silver bullet, you'll never get the right answer. But what you should be doing is measuring all of your actions, the outcome of those actions, so that you can adjust accordingly. So, that's what it is. But I think more importantly, what it isn't doing is waiting, right? Data driven decision making doesn't mean you wait. It just means you measure as you go.
Well, I think it's a really good explanation. So how does Nurture Boss measure performance? What are the things that you look at when you try an iteration to see whether it's working or not?
Yeah, so many things. So there's obvious indicators of success. So we want our email open rates to be above the industry average. We want the engagement with the text messages that we send to be above the industry average. We want to look at our conversions. How many tours are we driving, applications, leases, on-time rent payments, online reviews, renewals, like all of those boxes we want to check, right? But I think what you got to be doing is running multiple experiments at once. So,
Mhm.
let's say that I pull in a guest card for Donald and I know that he wants a 2-bedroom, and then I pull in a guest card for Jacob and I know he's bringing a dog. Well, I'm going to advertise 2-bedroom floor plans to Donald, and I'm going to advertise the pet amenities to Jacob. Which one's more effective there? Are they both effective for different reasons? Does one work and the other one doesn't? I'm going to play around with when I send these messages. Am I sending them in the morning, in the middle of the day, at night, right? And by doing a lot of different experiments and collecting a lot of data, we can figure out what's helping to drive more meaningful conversions with our prospective renters and residents.
Mhm. If you were talking to a marketer in the industry that's at a company that's a little behind others when it comes to data, what advice would you give them to start their data journey?
Yeah, so I think you'd be surprised how many uh, uh, smaller companies or older companies are not using kind of a master platform. What I mean by that is that there's a lot of pieces to the tech stack. One could argue the core of it is the property management software, right? And maybe you have a CRM layered on top of it. Maybe you have a BI tool, right? That's layered on top of it. But usually it's the core is the PMS, and folks are using or not using the PMS to the full extent. So they're not even able to pull data to understand what lead sources are performing, which ones aren't, and so on and so on. So I think the first thing that you do is you make sure you're using all of the tools at your disposal for your core system, so that you're at least set up to measure success, right? You're at least set up to measure these core attributes to know what's working and what's not, and then you can iterate on top of that to become more efficient and more modern in your approach.
Hmm. What one of my other favorite questions, because this industry, I mean, we are a little behind other industries. I mean, I believe it or not, I would tell you, having come into the industry back in '99, we're actually less behind than we were then. I feel like we've caught up some with revenue management, with data platforms like Reba. Little self interest right there, but I still think it's
Sure.
true. Um, I mean, there actually are modern CRMs now. I mean, when I ran marketing all the way through 2011, there was not anything that remotely looked like a contemporary CRM. So there's a lot of places where we've made progress. I think Nurture Boss trying to bring this dynamic automated decision making into the lead funnel is another example. But there's also sort of a reason for things to move a little more slowly here. So, as you reflect back on what's worked and what hasn't, and where you've been enabled, and more importantly, where you've been challenged, what do you see as some of the bigger challenges to data? What's kind of the biggest data threat to this industry?
Yeah, so I think there's a few parts there. So I'm going to try to answer your question, and if I ignore one of them, it's not intentional. Just tell me I didn't answer it. But I think that the mistake that you can make, and a reason to move slower, to your point, is you can't just take something that works generally speaking and think it's going to work here. So a lot of times a business looks at their leads as a disposable item. You can just market and blast your leads and blast them, and somebody will bite, and that's great. But in the apartment world, we're not living that reality. Everybody who expresses interest in us is going to move in or not, but they're going to be moving in, somewhere else a year later when their lease expires, or they're going to talk to their friends, right? So brand becomes incredibly important in multifamily. And if there's anything that multifamily marketers are really good at, it's branding, right? They understand reputation is important. They understand the emotions that you feel about the brand matter. So that's one of those reasons, a good reason to be cautious about, blind adoption of strategies that work in other industries and in other spaces. So I think having a good understanding of, our customers or lifelong customers, whether they rent with us or not, is a good way to not accidentally step off a cliff when implementing new strategies.
Yeah, talk a little bit about that last bit about even if they don't run with you, because I remember early in my consulting days, I was working with a company. I won't name them because I don't want to give away any of their trade secrets, but I'll just say at a high level, they realized that they had been throwing away leads the way you described, and they just started marketing to leads that were 9 months old. Right. So assuming a 12-month lease, they didn't even know where they leased or what the lease term was. But 80+% of them probably took a 12-month lease somewhere. So you're catching them right near when renewal offers will start to come to them. And my recollection is I think they converted like 2 to 3% of those leads into leases. And when you think the only cost of it was the penny an email to do a drip campaign, I mean, that was a stunning success. And I don't think too many people in this industry do that sort of thing.
Yeah, well, you did your self-interest, so I'll do mine. At Nurture Boss, we have something we call lost lead automation, and it's exactly what you described, right? There are leads that did not convert 9 months or 21 months ago, right? Let's even go another year out. They probably leased somewhere, and that lease is probably coming up for renewal. Let's try to get them back into tour, right? The other flip side of that is that, due to the nuance of the property management company owner relationship, this is not always possible, but when possible, when they're not interested in your property, there may be a sister property nearby that is worth marketing and advertising to that prospect, because maybe that checks the box that your property did not, right? So there's a lot of opportunity there, not just in lost lead, but and I'll give you one more example. If a common thing I don't see happening that should be is if a resident puts in their notice, you didn't lose the business, right? It's not over yet. Have they considered a transfer to a new unit at a different part of the property, right? Brand new home. They don't like the noise by the pool. That's fine. Let's get them away from the pool. There's other things that you can do to try to retain that customer. So I would add that to the list as well.
Yeah, I think it's interesting. You mentioned earlier how essentially the core is the PMS. And I wonder, maybe not in my career lifetime, but I wonder at some point, will the industry finally flip to where the core is the CRM and the property management system is just managing the transactions?
That's I think the thing that needs to happen, and that's the measurement or the stick that I'll measure, if you will, to determine if we finally arrived in our modern world, right? Is that CRM being that core piece?
Yeah, that's hard because that's easy to say, but it's hard to do when you've got decades of legacy data and processes all around the property that you're managing. So interesting. Yep. Cool. Well, now that we've done the heavy lifting, always like to end these interviews with a fun little rapid fire sort of James Lipton style thing for those of you out there who remember Inside the Actor Studio. So we boiled it down to 7 questions. We don't use his. We're not going to ask people for their favorite swear word or other things like that you can do in an Inside the Actor Studio. But As I say, 7 rapid fire questions. There's only one rule, Jacob, and that's don't think too hard. Okay.
Okay,
You ready?
I'm ready.
What book has influenced you the most?
I'll go with the happiness hypothesis. I don't remember who the author is, but it's a great book that kind of talks about, the modern frontal lobe thinking, fighting against the core built-in evolution reactions that we have to things, and it's really helped change my perspective on the way I react.
Cool. What's your favorite time of day?
Twilight, right before the sun sets, so it's not quite down yet. I can still go outside, just enough light to read a book, sort of a thing. I don't know why, I just feel good in that moment.
Excellent. What's your favorite app?
Oh man, my favorite app. I guess I'll go with the Slack app on my phone because it's probably where I spend most of my time. I don't feel like that's a very fun answer though.
I think you're right on both accounts. It is your favorite, and it's not much fun. Uh, what's your biggest pet peeve?
My biggest pet peeve is not cutting to the chase. If I feel like you're taking way too long to tell me the point, I'm not shy to jump in and say, "Hey, where are we going here with this? What's the end? What's the finish line?"
Got it. What's your spirit animal?
I'll go with I'm gonna go with the honey badger. I feel like they're tough little guys, and I like to think of myself as such.
Second to last, if you had one food to eat forever, what would you eat?
Oh man, I would eat top ramen. I lived off that stuff back in the day. There's a million different ways to cook it. It never gets boring. I'd live off chicken flavored top ramen.
There you go. And lastly, what's your go-to for having a good laugh?
Uh, that's a good question. Let's go with The Office. I don't think that's original, but I think that it stands true. So we'll go with The Office.
Well, excellent. Thanks for sharing your insights with us, Jacob. Where can people find out a little more about you and a little more about NurtureBoss?
Yeah, so our website, nurtureboss.io, everyone forgets that first R, so NURTUREBOSS.io. And then we try to stay pretty active on LinkedIn, so LinkedIn's a great place as well.
Excellent. Well, thank you very much for sharing some time with us.
Yeah, thanks for having me.